All right, you should be all set, Pete.
All right, are you seeing my screen there?
Got it.
Fantastic. Glad everybody was able to join us today. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, where we were supposed to get pounded with snow last night. Unfortunately, we only got about 4 inches and then a bunch of rain on top of it, so it's slush, and I was able to get into the studio so I could sit down and share some information with you guys about what we do with bridal shows. We have been in business, when I say we, I mean my wife and I. We were both full-time photographers, and we opened our studio in 1997 and did weddings sporadically for the first probably 6 years or so. It wasn't the main focus of our business, but in '03 we decided to become a full-time wedding studio. So we went from where weddings were maybe 5 to 10% of our business to where weddings were 60 to 70% of our business. And in that process, we went through and kind of looked at the things that we needed to do to draw attention to our studio. And a big part of that was bridal shows in the area. At the time, this was in '03 and '04, at the time, the internet wasn't quite as prominent as it is in weddings now. You didn't have things like the knot.com and all these forums and chat rooms and places where brides could share. Those were just starting to develop and weren't as prominent. And brides were still using bridal shows. And to this day, bridal shows are very prominent in our area and draw literally hundreds and sometimes thousands of brides to the shows. So what we had to do was figure out a formula for success so that if we were going to be investing money and time in going to these shows, we weren't just throwing money down the drain, especially when you were in a situation like we were where sometimes you'd have 50, 60, 70, up to I think at one show we had 85 or 89 photographers, just photographers, in addition to all the other vendors at the show. So we really needed to find a formula for success so that we didn't just blend in with everybody else and so that we stood out to the brides and grooms that were coming through the show. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is the various things that we've done. And we use the same formula for any type of show that we do. We do a baby fair. Occasionally we'll have open houses where we're invited to come and show our portraiture. And a lot of the things that we use, do that are successful for us at the wedding show, we translate that into the other types of photography that we offer so that those things work there as well. So like Kevin said, this doesn't just have to apply to weddings, it can apply to other things as well. So let's get started and let's talk a little bit about what we do. And a big part of that is getting ready for the big day. The biggest thing that I like to tell everybody, especially if it's your first show, is once you've made a decision on the size of booth that you want to have, and that can be determined by a number of different factors. It could be availability, they only have a certain size available. It could be budget reasons. I mean, a lot of times when you're first starting with shows, you go with what you can afford versus what you want. So it's just those types of factors that will help you determine the size booth you're going to get. If you've never done a booth and once you decide what you're going to have, the biggest recommendation I can tell you to make sure that you're ready is that you find a room or space where you can tape off those dimensions of the booth. So, for example, if you're getting a 10 by 10 or 10 foot by 10 foot booth, tape that 10 foot by 10 foot booth off. Tape off a 10 foot by 10 foot square in a large room, and then lay your booth out within that space. Probably, to me, the biggest mistake you can make, especially for a first-time show, is not knowing something like that. And then you show up to the bridal show, and one of two things is always going to happen. Either you're going to get there and have way too much stuff and not know where to put it all, and it's going to start getting cluttered, and then you've got all this extra stuff. Or, and this is the more common, you're going to show up thinking you've got more than enough stuff and the booth is going to look great. And then when you start setting up the booth, you start realizing, I don't have nearly enough stuff, and my booth looks really empty and very skeletal in terms of the design and layout. So having the opportunity to really set your booth up and build it in advance and step back and look at it and look at the things that you have in your booth really is crucial. It really allows you to put your best foot forward. I mean, you want to sit back and you want to look at it and say, I want to see every inch of this, and I want to see any flaws that might be an issue. If you're going to have electricity and lamps and TVs or things like that, you want to look at little things like, okay, are the power cords hidden, or are there just power cords jumbled up everywhere? Am I using the full height? You know, do I have plenty of space in terms of going up and being kind of at the eye line of brides and grooms as they walk by? I think a mistake that a lot of photographers tend to make is they put a lot of stuff really low in the booth. And I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm walking through any type of a trade show, I'm not looking at the floor other than making sure I don't trip on anything. I'm looking at things that are at the eye level, that eye line. So, you know, I always, when I'm setting up a booth in terms of pre-staging it, I'm kind of looking at the things that I really, really want people to see, and I'm putting those right at their eye level so that it's easy for them to see. So just looking at every inch of your booth and looking at those things, you know, are you going to put down an area rug if it's a concrete floor at the venue? Are you going to bring your own drape so that you have a different color backdrop? Because a lot of the pipe and drape places that they have for these shows have the same pipe and drape consistently for every show, and there's nothing saying that you necessarily have to use that. You can always put your own backdrop up. So just looking at these types of things and stepping back really helps you prepare for the day. You end up carrying exactly what you need, and maybe just a little extra, but not a ton more than what you really have to have for the show, which, you know, when you get there and you start setting up, it's a lot quicker, it's a lot easier, it's a lot smoother, and you've already taken care of a lot of the issues that you probably would have run into on the day of if you hadn't done that. And that's a really big deal. The next big thing I tell everybody is go big or go home. And you know, this kind of goes back to the when brides and grooms are walking by, having everything at eye level. Well, also, you want to have it large enough for them to see. On average, you have between 2 and 5 seconds of actual glance time. I call it glance time, you know, that time when the bride and groom are walking by their booth and they glance over at your space. You have 2 to 5 seconds to really catch their eye. And, you know, I've looked at a lot of booths over the last decade plus, and one of the biggest mistakes I see is photographers that say, you know, I've got so many images that I really love, I want to put them all up, I want them to see everything. And then they stick up a bunch of 4x6s and 5x7s and 8x10s, and they do this mass wall of a lot of images. Well, there's 2 problems with that. Number one, it's so small that bride and groom can't really enjoy the impact of any single one of those images. And number 2, it looks so cluttered and so busy that a lot of times it's almost disturbing to the eye to see. So we've always kind of taken to the school of thought of going with less is more and having 3, 4, 5, 6 really large prints or gallery wraps hung up and using kind of our most impactful pieces there so that when they see those, that they're then drawn into the booth because what they saw was so cool they want to see more. And then you have the opportunity to share with them the 4x6s, 5x7s, 8x10s, the smaller sizes that you maybe have in albums or displayed in other ways that are easy to see. But you've got to use that 2 to 5 seconds for that really strong impact to really grab their attention and hold them. And to me, I hate to see somebody fill their booth with a lot of clutter. Even when you get to your album displays and how you have your albums laid out, I see people that bring almost too many albums, and they have them all laid out, stacked on top of each other. And you know, the reality is a lot of times when you do that, some of your better wedding albums might get lost in the shuffle, and you might have lost an opportunity to have a bride really enjoy something that would have meant something to them because there was so much there that they didn't know where to start and they were having to dig through things. Whereas if it's very clean and simple and laid out, they can get quickly to the albums and everything is easy versus them having to dig for it. And, you know, always having those extra albums accessible. So if somebody does want to see something and you want to have it there, maybe have it under a table or behind your booth space or something like that so you can go grab it. The next thing that's important to us is having the right tool for the job. While we're going through and we're setting up our space, we bring way more than what we probably need, and this is the area where I think it's important to overplan. We bring in, staple guns and tool sets and tape and double-sided tape and, drills and hammers and just anything you can imagine. Probably one of the best things that we've ever purchased, including our camera gear, is a thing called the Total Trolley. And I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it. And it was funny because I think it was about 10 or 12 years ago, we were up late on an insomnia streak where we were watching lots of infomercials and seeing all these crazy things at night, and they had this commercial for the Total Trolley, and you could search it, totaltrolley.com or something like that. But it was like $70, and it was a 3-in-1. It had 4 wheels on it so that you could set furniture or things on it and push and pull it around with a handle or just as a flatbed. Then it also would stand upright as a flatbed, as a dolly, and you could put crates and heavy things on it and just tip it back and roll it in. But then on top of that, it also worked as a little step ladder, a three-step step ladder. So we would literally load all of our stuff up in tubs and boxes, roll it in on the trolley, and then while we're setting the booth up, we'd set it up as a ladder so we could hang things up nice and high. So the Total Trolley has been invaluable to us. The other thing that was invaluable to us was the decision to switch to the Sterilite type tubs that you can get at Walmart and Target for $4 or $5. We would literally put all of our albums, all of our cards, all of our paperwork, all of our tools, everything we had in those, because we could seal it away and very easily stack them on top of each other and didn't have to worry about albums sliding and falling. And it came to light because there were a couple of times where we were walking in and we would have like 3, 4, 5, sometimes 7, 8 albums stacked in our hands, and one of the top albums would slide off and fall and hit and just ding the corner of it. Now you've got this really nice expensive display album that you've completely destroyed the corner of the album, and it just, you don't feel comfortable showing it anymore. And after you've done that 2 or 3 times and cost yourself money on display albums, you got to think of a way to carry things in easily and not have to worry about it. So the Sterilite tubs were nice because we could literally put a dozen or more albums in there depending on the size, snap it closed with the lid. So if it's raining, I don't have to worry about them getting rained on, and I could just literally pick up one tub or stick it on the Total Trolley and roll it in and be done. But the bigger thing with having the right tool for the job that really came into play for us, and it didn't really strike us at the time, but it has become huge for us since, is that what we found was, because we had done the homework in advance and we had always pre-laid out our booth and always looked at the things that were going to be issues or problems and addressed those and knew exactly what we were going to do when we came in, we had made the setup of the booth so quick and efficient that when we showed up and set the booth up, it maybe took us 30, 45 minutes to get it set up and we were done. And we usually had a 2 to 3 hour period window to get everything in. So number one, we could show up just a little bit later than everybody else and avoid the rush of all the cars trying to get in and load in. But number two, we had the ability to, after we were done, walk around to the other vendors and kind of network and use that as an opportunity to say, hey, we've got all of our tools and all of our stuff. Do you need a step ladder? Do you need, a staple gun? Do you need a hammer? Do you need double-sided tape? Is there anything you need? And we would spend the rest of the time before the show opened walking around the vendors, helping them out and doing what we could to help them finish their booth setup and loaning them the things they needed. And that's such an invaluable thing. I mean, it may sound like extra work, but those vendors really looked at us and said, man, you really came to the rescue and you really helped us out. And it became an invaluable way for us to network and build friendships and relationships within the industry. And it became almost another tool in the box for us when it came to that part of our business. It's helped with the referral side of weddings for us. And we would almost book as many weddings as a result of the friendships that we had built through helping them out as we did from the brides that were actually walking through. In fact, we would see an immediate impact because we would help certain vendors out with problems they had, and then as a result they would remember that, and immediately at the bridal show, if a bride was talking to them and they needed a photographer, that vendor would say, hey, you know what, you should check out PW Photography. They're really great, and they're up there, blah, blah, blah. So having that immediate impact at the show just by having extra tools with you to help somebody is fantastic. And we've kind of gotten to a point where you have to think that way. You have to think outside of the box. I think we all have a tendency to step in a box and only worry about what's going on inside that box within our world. But if we take a few minutes here and there and think about what's happening outside of that box and think about ways that we can affect those issues and those problems, a lot of times that comes back to us. We refer to it as karma or whatever you want, but I'm a true believer in good karma. I'm a true believer that if we're good and kind and help other people, that it'll come back to us. The next thing that we consider when we're setting up our booth is location, and this is an important one. There's always kind of dead zones in bridal shows where they get traffic, but it's not as heavy a traffic, and brides might see you one time and be done. Then there's other spots in the show that are very high traffic, and you're going to be seen more than once, a lot of times 2 or 3 times, and you'll get a lot of traffic within your booth, and you'll get a lot of visibility. And that to us was super important. We wanted to make sure that we had tons of really good visibility. One of the best things you could do is actually talk to the wedding planner or the bridal show coordinator, the person that runs the show. They're usually pretty honest with you, and they'll tell you based on what we have left, this is the best spot that we have available. But the other thing you can do is ask to see a floor plan or a layout. And they may not have a floor plan or layout of the upcoming show, but usually they'll have a floor plan from the previous one that can give you a pretty good idea of what the one that they're getting ready to do looks like. And if you have a floor plan, you can ask them based on the floor plan what's available, so that when you're looking at it, you can kind of go through and choose what seems like the best place for you. Here's an example of one that we do. And when you look at this, I don't know if you guys can see my pointer or not, but the show entrance right up at the front here, to us, we thought of that as this is kind of your funnel. Everything has to come in and out of here. So anytime you can be near the show entrance in one of these front booths, they're going to pass you coming in, and then they're going to pass you coming back out. And then the same is kind of true of the fashion show. The fashion show really doesn't have anything to do with where they're coming in and out, but it has everything to do with kind of a feature point of the show. The fashion show for our bridal shows in this area are a huge draw, and a lot of brides will actually wait until about an hour before the bridal show or before the fashion show to even show up, because the main thing they want to see is the fashion show, and they want to see the various fashions that they're having. So being around the fashion show is also good, because what happens during the fashion show, everybody's standing there, and a lot of times while they're standing there, they'll kind of peek in at the booths that are around in between segments of the fashion show. But they don't want to go too far away, but they also don't want to waste their time just standing around, so they'll peek at these booths here. We always tried to get this booth right here. This was our standard booth for years and years and years. And the only reason we lost it was because we had twins and we took a year off of doing bridal shows so that we could focus on our family. With most shows, if you repeat, you sign a contract to do the show over and over and over again, you maintain your space and you don't lose your space unless you want to. So we always tried to get the very front booth. We got a 10 by 20 at the very front of the show, so that we were the very first thing the brides saw when they came in, and we were the last thing that they saw when they were leaving. And that really gave us the ability to have that lasting impression on them. But the biggest thing we had to do is make sure that we didn't just have an ordinary looking space when we were there. We wanted to make sure that we had something that wowed them and something that grabbed them. So I'm going to take a quick break and let Kevin jump in, and then we're going to show you photos of our booth and let you talk to you about the different things that we did and how the booth grew as we went through, as I go through some of the photos. Kevin?
Thanks, Pete. So guys, the main reason we're doing this webinar today is because we are running a promotion, and I'm sure you've seen the emails, but we're running a promotion right now for 50% off sample albums. It's just one thing we're doing for the month of February, kind of going with the theme of Valentine's Day. We're showing off unlimited love to you guys. And basically, the purpose of the webinar is to kind of let you guys know about how important it is to have samples to show your customers or potential brides or potential customers. And I'm sure Pete can back me up here that it means way more to show a customer an actual album of what you're offering rather than trying to explain it to them.
Absolutely.
Being able to touch, feel, imagine what your wedding or your pictures are going to look like in that book or that album really means a lot. So we are giving out a special coupon code for this webinar only at the end, and I'll give you a little more details about that. But a lot of our photographers are taking advantage of this right now. Albums are normally 30% off for your studio, but for the month of February, we are offering 50% off albums, whether that's an album, seamless bind book, or a press-print coffee table book. The coupon code will work on all of those products. So, Pete, I don't want to take away from too much of your presentation, so I'm going to actually hand it back over to you, and you can take it from here.
Absolutely. And what we'll be talking about coming up is how we use our albums for the show and how important it is to really not only have great sample albums, but to think about how you use them within your booth. A lot of people just say, well, it doesn't matter, it's just an album. I mean, I'm having one printed, I'll put it there, that's fine. But there are strategic ways to use and place your albums so that they help draw traffic and bring brides in. I will say, as a preface, that when we do our display albums, we do our display albums different than a lot of people do. We never, ever, ever use an actual client album as our display album. And not because our clients' albums aren't great and aren't beautiful and pretty, but because a lot of the images that go in our client albums really mean absolutely nothing to somebody that doesn't know them or hasn't seen them. It has no meaning to them. So certain snapshots or certain images of people that are just kind of random in there, to us that's a waste of space for a sample album. It's a lost opportunity for us to show our premier images and our best images. And the other thing we do is we also leave out a lot of the formals or the altar returns, the family portraits at the altar after the reception, after the ceremony, because in our minds, everybody knows what they look like. Everybody knows what to expect with those. They know that they're going to be taken. So for me to waste space within an album, again, taking up 2, 3, 4, 5 pages in an album to show those, it takes away an opportunity for me to show images that are more in line with our style of work, the fun candids or some of the set shots and things like that. You have an opportunity with your sample albums to show what you want to show and for people to see what you want them to see. And, the result is, it's funny, a lot of our clients now, they actually will go through and they'll say, I really don't want to have those formals and those family shots in my album. I'd really rather actually have those in a frame sitting on the mantle or on a table or something so they can be seen all the time. But when I look at my album, I don't want to have my album that's telling the story of my day and then all of a sudden it stops in the middle of the story to have these group photos and then the story picks back up. And that's really what it is. It's almost kind of like a little doorstop where everything's interrupted and it picks back up. So for us, we like our sample albums to have a little bit more of a flow and show our documentary style of photography and really put our work on display. And occasionally we'll have people say, well, do you do the formals? Do you do those types of shots? And we explain, yes, absolutely, we do. And you can include anything you want in your album, but for our purposes, we like to make sure that you see and get a good feel for our work before you hire us. So anyway, moving on to our booth, and I'll touch on how we use albums as we go through the pictures of our booth. I'm going to start with what our booth looked like probably 10 years ago and move forward and just kind of show you some of the progressions since then. And what you'll see is every single show we made some minor adjustments here and there and tried a few things here and there to really have some great impact and draw people in. So this has been years ago. And when we did this booth, this was the very first year that we had that front spot, and we knew we wanted to have impact that people saw when they first walked in. So we decided let's have this red couch. Let's have something that grabs everybody's eyes. And at this point, we were the only people that had furniture in our booth. Nobody else had furniture. Everybody basically had the 6-foot tables that were draped and stuff laying on top of them. We told the bridal show company that we didn't want any of the chairs and tables that came with the typical booth. The other thing we asked, and the one thing I tell everybody, it never hurts to ask. The worst they can tell you is no. But if you don't ask for something, then you're never going to get it. Well, if you look at all the other booths around us back in these areas, the panels are alternating white, black, white, black, white, black, all back here. And we just asked the bridal show planner, hey, is it possible to have solid black all the way across so that we have one color? Because I didn't want the confusion of the contrast of the white, black, white, black, white, black to diminish the impact of our images. I either wanted solid white or solid black so that the focus was 100% on the images that were there. So that was the first question we asked, and we got assured we could do that. The next question we asked was, hey, are there any height limitations? Do we have to stay within the 8-foot height of the pipe and draper? Can we go above that? Because I think it had like 30-foot ceilings in the convention center, and he's like, no, you can go as high as you want. In fact, if you want, you can actually rent some of the lifts and hang things from the ceiling. You have to use the union crew to do that, to make sure that it's suspended properly and stays within insurance bounds and things like that. So there's things you have to go through with that. But again, had we not asked, we would not have known. So we had several 14-foot light stands at our studio that what we did was built a little, we took a 2x4, a 6-inch 2x4 block, and then we took a 12-foot 1x4 and put them together in the shape of an L, drilled a hole in the 2x4 block so that it would sit into, or so that the stand would fit right into it at the top, painted it black, and then put Velcro on it. And then we Velcroed 16x20s on the back so that we could literally Velcro 16x20 prints onto this onto this huge board and raise the stand 14 feet up. And I think here we've got them about 12 feet in the air. But the reality is we were several feet above anybody else in the show, so no matter where you were, you saw our photos from somewhere, and even if you couldn't tell what it was, you saw something, you're like, I want to go see what that is. I want to go check that out. So it drew people's attention forward. So those two things, having the red couch and having that unique style of kind of a living room setup and going above the height and then having the black curtain really, really worked for us. The red couch became such a landmark for us that we literally had brides coming to the booth saying, a friend of mine told me I had to come see the photographers with the red couch in their booth. We literally heard that so many times that we almost considered changing our name to Red Couch Photography. It was an interesting dynamic, and I mean, while we wanted to stand out a little bit, we didn't know it was going to work that well for us. The very next show we did, which this was the January show, the next show was in August, we took the same approach. We made one minor change. We added a zebra ottoman. Now, what you'll notice is these are concrete floors, and we brought in a small area rug. Our thinking in all of this was, if we give them an area rug to stand on, and we're the only booth there that has a soft place for people's feet, they're going to stand a little bit longer. Or if we give them a place to sit down, they'll actually come into our booth and sit down and relax for a little while and look through booths versus look through albums versus walking and walking and walking. The other thing we did at the time, this was back when flat screen TVs or LCD TVs were super, super expensive. We would actually just rent a couple of them from the local rent-a-center, and it was, I think it was like $120 to rent them for 2 weeks, and it was fun because the January show, the end of January, sometimes worked out that when you rented them, you had them for 2 to 3 weeks, and we would end up with these TVs for really great Super Bowl parties. So it was kind of nice. But now you can buy TVs for next to nothing. You can go to Walmart or all these other places on Black Friday and pick up TVs for the shows. But the furniture that we had there, just about all the furniture you see is actually from IKEA. So it was very little in terms of investment. In fact, the books on the sides, the tables on the sides that have albums on them, these are also from IKEA. They're called bed tables, and they have wheels under the legs of each side. And they're actually made to sit at the foot of your bed, and while you're in bed, you can actually roll it over your lap and work on your laptop or read or whatever. And when you're done, just roll it to the foot of the bed when you go to bed at night. Well, the nice thing for us was we'd get to the show, we would load these tables up with albums and product, and then we would just roll everything into the room preloaded. It was fantastic. So just little things like that that we would find that really worked out well for us. Again, here you actually see the tall stands, and you can actually see the one on the right-hand side there. You can see the white strip of Velcro. We didn't Velcro all the way down because it was hidden behind the TV, so we only went up, I think, about 12 feet on this one, 12 feet on this side, maybe 11 feet on the other side, because it was going to be blocked by the TV. So then our next progression, we went to the same type of look, but now we got rid of the slipcover that was on the couch, and we found a couple of cool red eggshell type chairs on eBay. I think we paid $170 for the pair, and you could get them in any color you wanted. So we said, okay, well, if the chairs are going to be red, let's go to a white couch, but with accent pillows that match and kind of tie everything in. And we switched the layout just a little bit, but we still had kind of a consistent feel and look. We didn't completely change our booth. One of our things that we've found to be true, and there's an old saying with branding, you have to be seen 3 times before you're remembered. And if you change completely every time they see you, then all 3 times they saw you, they almost feel like they saw 3 different companies, and there's nothing recognizable. So we would make little adjustments, little tweaks here and there, but we always tried to stay somewhat consistent in terms of the look and feel so people were comfortable with what they were seeing. As you'll see here, and I'm actually going to go back a slide if I can, but as you'll see, we went back to there. We always had a handful of really large images, and these, I think, were 20 by 24s or something like that. Then we eventually moved to where we got rid of these because these were 16 by 20s on the tall stands, and we just went to 4 really high-impact images. All of these images were 30 inches on the small side. I want to say this was a 30 by 40, 30 by 40, 30 by 50 pano, tall pano, and another 30 by 40. You can't see the whole image on this one. But we, again, went for that large, high impact, let them see the images that draw them in, and then let them look at our albums and see the smaller images in the albums. And the thinking was just, again, let's let them see it, get the impact, and bring them in. Now, at this point, we were getting ready to move to the next show, and right before the next show, about 2 or 3 months before the next show, we found out that we were pregnant with twins. So we knew we wanted to go out with an impact, and we wanted to have a big showing for our last booth, and we knew we were going to take at least a year off from bridal shows, but we didn't want to completely lose business from it. So this is what we went with next. Now, the neat thing about this booth is that the booth cost us next to nothing. We paid for the rental of the space, but the truss work and the uplighting was all free for us, because what we did was networked with the company that did this and said, they basically said, we'd love to put this stuff in your booth because it really allows us to show brides what it is that we can do for them, whether they want to have, uplighting at their event, or if they want to put some neat type truss stuff around the DJ or the band. If, they can actually build tables and furniture out of the truss work that they have. So there's a lot of neat little options that they had. So the really cool thing for us was that we didn't pay anything for any of this. The other thing was that we decided to go super high with the booth. So all the other booths were 8 feet. Our booth was 12 feet tall. So we went super, super tall. We had the red background on here that really had impact and grabbed everybody. We mounted the TV up high so everybody saw it. 4 big prints, everything again at least 30 inches tall. Probably the biggest mistake we made with this was that our sign was the same color as the backdrop and it almost disappeared. You really had a hard time seeing it. But fortunately, our booth was so bright, so vibrant, and had so much impact that, people, if they didn't see our sign, they were going to come into our booth and check us out and, ask questions and learn about us. So this booth really had a lot of really good impact for us for the last one before we were gone for a little over a year. And then when we came back, we had been out of weddings, not completely out of weddings, but had been really focused on our kids. And we had done, I guess, a year and a half without doing bridal shows, and we were still booking pretty good even without doing the bridal shows, just off of referrals. So we decided just to stick our toe back in the water. We wanted to do a smaller booth and kind of see what kind of response we got. So we just did a 10 by 10 and just, muted colors, very simple. And we didn't have the impact with this one. I mean, it was a little tight with the 10 by 10, and once you added all the truss and everything in there, it was too tight to move around in. And even though we were, fortunate enough and smart enough to ask for a corner so that we would have 2 open sides, we still ran into the problem that once you put all the furniture in and all the albums were over here, that people had a hard time getting into the booth. They loved the images that they saw, and they liked the design aesthetics of the booth, but in general, it just didn't perform well for us. So, you make mistakes and you learn from them. So the next show we still couldn't get our space back. Like I mentioned earlier, you lose your space and you have to basically wait until somebody leaves to be able to get a better space as you move up. So the next show, we actually decided, okay, let's change the aesthetic completely, and let's go with kind of a vintage type feel. And we're back at the front. Let's get a 10 by 20. That was definitely a clear thing for us that we needed a larger booth if we were going to have furniture in it. So we went with this. Now, we were right by the bathroom, so we definitely got a lot of traffic, but we were facing the rest of the show. So while we got, good traffic, we didn't get as much as we used to get facing the other way when we were actually facing the entrance. But what we went with was a little bit more of a French boutique. We got a couple of French chairs, a bookshelf where we had a space for some small candids. We hung a candle chandelier above the center of the booth from a boom arm, and it was, it actually did well because everybody at the time was into that vintage thing. So we had, I think these are called modern vintage backgrounds from F.J. Westcott. They cost like $100, so we bought 3 of those, and it really gave a nice feminine appeal and feel, and it did well for us. But it didn't necessarily feel quite as clean and refined as what we had hoped. So the next show we did, we actually got our space back, and we decided to go very, very clean, very refined, and this is what we went with. Now, the neat thing with this booth is this is a modular setup. So what you've got behind this is a military airplane grade aluminum framework, so it's super, super light, super rigid, and then there's these 3-foot by 3-foot panels that are covered with felt, and they just Velcro to the framework, and then you Velcro whatever you want directly to those panels. So the 3-foot by 3-foot panels, each of those images is a 20 by 24, and they're literally just Velcroed on the wall. And what we wanted to do is kind of create a seating area that feels like you're sitting in a very nice living room or dining room, a very modern feeling room. And this was kind of the first step toward that. We kind of progressed through this as we learned how flexible this setup was. I mean, we just rented this modular system, and it saved us money just in being able to do that. If you zoom in, you can actually really see the modular system. And we had Parcan lights on the floor uplighting the images that were there, and we had a TV on a stand. The next show that we did, we actually asked them if we could have the TV mounted within the wall, which they were able to do. They just basically cut a hole in a couple of the modular boxes there and built a little framework around the TV, so it made it even more clean. And what you'll notice is it's pretty much the same booth with the exception of the fact that the TV is mounted, so we stay consistent in terms of the look of the booth. This, though, what we really started doing with this show, especially when we started having these two tables out front and having things where people didn't have to feel the need to commit to walking into the booth, because what we did see over the years was people didn't necessarily want to walk into a booth. They felt like they were trapped. But if they could have something that's just on the edge or just on the outskirt where they didn't have to feel committed or like they were going to be approached, but they could quickly see something they like, take a look at it, and keep going if they wanted. But if what they saw was really good, they'd step in and ask questions. Well, this is where our display albums really came into play for us. We started to become very strategic in the images that we would place on the wall back here corresponding with the albums that were out here. So what you'll see is we would have an image that had impact and that brides had told us they really loved up here so that people would see it. And then we'd have the album on display open to that page right here. So if a bride came in and said, I really love that image, that's beautiful, that's the feel I want, I'm like, oh yeah, well you should come over here and check out their entire wedding. And boom, walk them right over to it. They're telling us when they approach us in the booth that this is the image that they love, this is the feel they want. So by having the image there, we can walk them right over to something that's already got their interest. Same thing here. The image, you can only see the edge of the image here, but here's the image. Here's the collages.net album that was created for us that features that exact same image. So they could say, I love this image. Well, let me show you the album. Boom. So just having that impact. Next, we even went further with the more clean, refined, that boutique type feel, and we had them develop this modular system. And the neat thing about this modular system is that you can make it anything you want it to be. I mean, it comes in 12-inch, 18-inch, 3-foot, 2-foot sections. You design it, and they build it to what you want. So again, we have the TV built in here, but now we built walls in, and we put truss across the top with lighting back here. We mounted a chandelier above the whole booth. This lighting lit all the portraits that are on the wall. We actually Velcro mounted gallery wraps to the wall, and then the 20 by 24s we actually framed down now and Velcroed them to the walls. And now instead of having those tables on the corners, we actually had them build out a shelf on this, and there's white PVC or white plexiglass here with lights uplighting it, almost like a light box. And the albums were sitting on top of that with the uplight from inside, kind of giving that glow and drawing attention to it. So a really neat way of having our booth set up to draw people in and almost giving them an escape. It was nice because bridal shows can get so loud and make so much noise that you really have a hard time talking to each other within your own booth. But by us having these side walls, we could literally come in here and sit down with a potential bride and groom and have a discussion and be able to hear each other without having to scream and shout, which was fantastic. So this is kind of this is the look, and this is what our typical bridal show booth looks like now with this type of feel and design. And the best piece of advice I can give you is, when it comes to the layout and the design of your booth is, not just taking cues from what I'm doing, but if you actually go to Google and you type in bridal show booth and then click on image when the search is complete, it will literally show you thousands and thousands of images of people's bridal show booths. And you can go through and say, ooh, I like that, or I don't like that. I want to use this from that one and this from that one. But with Google's image search now, you have these great tools at your fingertips to help you design great-looking booths and seeing things that you think would work for you. So while you're laying your booth out, you can use those aesthetics to really make your design. Once you've gone through and you've done everything, and you've decided, okay, this is what my booth's going to look like, this is what I'm going to do, the biggest thing I could tell you is be different. The last thing you want to do is lay your booth out and the images you choose and the things you do look just like everybody else's. We always try to be different in every possible way, even to the point where once we started seeing that a lot of other photographers were bringing furniture in, we would make note of, okay, they're bringing furniture in that looks a lot like what we have, so let's change furniture. we would literally try to change something about our booth, as you noticed, every single time, so that every time somebody tried to mimic something that we were doing, we would be a step ahead of them, one step ahead. But the biggest thing was, with our imagery, trying to show things that were very, very different, things that didn't feel traditional or didn't feel like everybody else did them. We wanted to put our most unique images up, and that's really important. And if you kind of go through and you're looking at your work and you don't feel like you have anything, really unique or something that stands out, go out and create it. There's nothing saying that the work that you show in your booth has to be from an actual wedding or an actual bride. You can go on Craigslist or eBay and buy really nice gowns for 50 or 100 bucks, or even better, and we still do this for the classes we teach and the workshops we do. We'll actually go to the gown shops and buy last year's model dresses for as little as $25. So we have probably a dozen dresses in studio that we use for the various workshops we do. But if you're trying to come up with really great images, then you can go out and get yourself a nice wedding gown for 25, 50 bucks. Find a model or find somebody that you know, dress them up as a bride, and then go out where you have no time constraints and you're not trying to do something to please a client, and create something really amazing for you, and inspirational images for you, and then show those. That's going to be reflective of what you want to do. The reality is, if there's a certain type of work, a certain type of photography that you really, really want to do, if you don't show it, then you'll never do it. You're only going to do the type of work that you show. So if you're showing things that you just don't enjoy doing, and you keep showing it, you're going to keep doing that type of work. But if you have that dream type of image or that dream type of client that you want to get, then go out and create that image on your own, and then show it. And then the brides and the clients that appeals to will be the ones that hire you, and you'll get to do that type of work all the time. So be different. Show things that you're passionate about and that you love, and show things that nobody else is showing if you can. It's always going to help you from the business standpoint. And use innovation. We started 2 or 3 years ago, we started walking around our booth with iPads in our hands. And it worked really well. What we would do was create storyboards of every single wedding we shot, and then we would categorize them by venue and by vendor. So if a bride came into our booth and said, have you done a wedding at the Commonwealth Club or at the Jefferson or at this venue or that venue, it's hard for me to do a physical album of every single wedding that we've done. But it's really easy for me to do a storyboard, or even what's been really cool for us is doing the digital brag books that collages.net has, because that allows us to do a quick featurette of multiple weddings. So you could literally go through and do a digital brag book of every single wedding you do, keep them on your iPad or on a tablet, and when a bride walks up to you and says, you've got all these great weddings, I love your work, do you have anything here, or have you ever done a wedding at such and such a place? Well, if you don't have the tablet or you don't have the album, you can say, we've done several weddings out there and I love working out there, I just don't have anything to show you. But if you've done the digital brag books on your tablet, you can say, I have actually, let me show you a quick sneak peek of some of the highlights of a wedding we've done there. You're not showing them a complete wedding necessarily, but what you are able to show them is a quick reference of a handful of images to give them a taste of what you can do there. And that's powerful. That type of innovation, not many photographers are taking the time to do those types of things. If you take the initiative to use the innovations that are out there and use great technology to be able to walk around with a tablet or an iPad in your hand and right at your fingertips be able to show a bride exactly what their wedding could look like at their venues, at their ceremony and their reception venue. Or if they say, have you ever worked with this lighting company or this florist, to be able to say, yes, actually I have. Let me show you some photos of how I photographed their flowers or their lighting. And it's great because other vendors found out, hey, I heard that you've got this digital brag book that you show these images this way and that you have some of my weddings. That's really cool. And we would literally have other vendors from around the show walking brides all the way across the building to our booth so that they could show our images of their stuff on the tablet. So we had people just throughout the show. We'd have florists coming over saying, let me show you this one wedding that we did. These are the flowers I was telling you about. And they bring them over. This is Pete. He's the photographer that captured this. Or this is Liliana. She captured this image. And we'd pull it right up on the tablet for them. So they were bringing us clients from all over the show because they knew we had images of every single wedding we had done for years right there on the tablet that featured their images. So those types of innovation are fantastic for you, and it's really neat because they work out in ways that you would never have thought of. We thought, hey, this will be great to be able to show them any venue, but we never thought about the fact that other vendors would actually bring brides to us to show their work in our booth. So they just work out in ways for you that are fantastic that you don't think of, and if you don't do these things, then you never know what you could be missing out on. The next thing I try to tell everybody is to look busy, and this is especially true if you don't have a single wedding on the books. If this is your first bridal show and you know for a fact that you're completely open, you never want a bride to know that you're open. You never want to seem desperate or anxious to get work. You always want to feel like you're in demand. I could usually just about tell you every single date that I'm booked and every single date that I'm available. So a bride could walk up to me and say, hey, do you have June 6th available? I'm pretty sure I would know whether I have June 6th available or not. But if I very quickly say, yes, I'm definitely available, I know I'm available, well, then there's no pressure. There's no sense of urgency from their point that they feel like they need to book you right away. So what we've done at every single wedding is we keep a piece of paper folded up in our coat pocket or our pants pocket, and when a bride walks up to us, no matter what date she asks for, no matter what we know, we always pull that piece of paper out, and it'll have dates. It'll have the wedding dates that we're already booked on written down, but then it'll have other things. If you don't have any weddings, you write your kids' soccer practices or whatever down. But, you know, have something written down, and when a bride says, are you available for my wedding date, you pull the piece of paper out, you study the piece of paper and say, you know what? I'm busy before and after, but I am available on your wedding date, so it looks like I can actually still photograph your wedding. By doing that, you're creating that sense of urgency. You make it look like you're in demand, and they feel like, man, they had to go through and look, and it looks like they were booked all around, so they might book pretty quickly. Whereas if they talk to you and that sense of urgency isn't there, and they feel like, oh, well, that was quick, they're wide open, that means I can book them whenever I want, or maybe they're not in demand enough, and there's a reason for that. Brides can jump to conclusions. So you want to give them that sense of urgency. You want to give them that feeling of you're in demand and they need to book you, and that's just a really quick illusion that you can play with them. Next is pricing information, and pricing information at the bridal show is important for us for a couple of reasons. We don't give all of our pricing information out, but we do give our starting price and what's included in our starting prices to qualify the bride, because I don't want to spend a ton of time talking to clients that can't afford us. The last thing you want to do is spend all this time sending information and communicating back and forth with a bride, and then they find out, oh, you're twice what my budget allows. So it's always nice to be completely upfront with them about where you start, but we never give them our packages. We never hand out our pricing at the bridal show because we look at that as an opportunity to gather information from them. And we tell all of our brides, you know what, we're going to be sending our information out this evening. If you'll take just a couple of minutes and fill out the sheet, we'd be glad. And it's just a really simple 4x5 postcard that has basic information, the bride's name, the groom's name, their wedding date, their venues, address information, and how they want us to contact them, which is important. Some brides want a phone call. They want you to pick up the phone and call them. Some have no desire for you to call them, and they want to receive via email. But we tell them we will be sending our information on pricing out. This is where we start, but we'll send you the detailed package information this evening. Now, we used to spend literally thousands of dollars to have really fancy printed out information packages that was in a trifold, and the prices were printed on vellum, and there was a fancy bow and ribbon, and we would mail these things out the day after the show, and then they'd get it the Wednesday or Thursday. But as the internet revolution really started to grow, what started happening is people were sending their information via email, and the brides literally, by the time they received our packages in the mail, they had gotten the information from other photographers and had met with them or met with 2 or 3 photographers before they even had our packages, and in some cases had already made their decision. So, you know, on one hand, it saved us money on the by not having to have all this stuff printed. We kind of missed that tactile thing. You know, having a bride physically touch really nice paper and really nice packaging and seeing that's a great thing because it gives them a feel for the quality and the standards that you have as a business. But at the same time, if it's at the expense of losing brides because they want information now, then you kind of have to go with the flow and go with what's there. So we make it a point to gather their information, and then literally that night we email every single bride that asks for information our packages. Now, here's a big, big key for this. When you email all that package information to them, include a photo of your booth. Once you're done setting your booth up and everything's built, take a snapshot of your booth. Even if it's just with your cell phone, take a snapshot of your booth, and then include that photo, embed that photo of your booth in the body of the email so that when they get it, they're like, oh yeah, that's that booth with the red couch. I really liked them. You know, people are visual people, and they're probably going to get hundreds and hundreds of emails from all these other vendors that were at the bridal show. So if you have something in your booth that jars them, oh yeah, that's the one that had this really great image and this or that or whatever, when they see that picture of your booth, it's going to put them right back into that moment when they had that discussion where they decided they wanted to get information from you. They'll remember the discussions you had because they can visualize it. And that's such an important key. If you're comfortable, you can actually have somebody take a photo of you in front of your booth so they can visualize who you are and remember what you look like. Any visual cues that you can give them are going to be helpful. And those, again, are the types of things that a lot of photographers aren't doing that are just so simple and easy. The next thing is to clear your calendars. You know, to me, the last thing that you want to do is go through, have this great bridal show, and because you had a bunch of portrait sessions and a bunch of things on your schedule the week after the show, you don't have the ability to meet with brides. Well, brides aren't going to not meet with other photographers because you're not available to meet with them. So we always make it a point that whenever we do a bridal show to make sure we have 0 on our calendar the week after the bridal show, so that as soon as brides start calling us to meet with us, we can start scheduling meetings with them. We'll even take the calendar with us. The nice thing about having the iPads with us is we can actually schedule meetings while we're at the bridal show, and because our calendar is wide open, we have the ability to meet with them whenever they want to because we have no conflicts. So keeping your calendar open and moving portrait sessions 2 weeks out instead of right after the bridal show is so important. Then sell yourself. Find things about yourself that are unique. Find things that you can say about yourself that really set you apart. For us, like I mentioned earlier, we're a husband-wife team. We're both full-time photographers, and neither one of us are second shooters. We're both first shooters. And that's how we sell ourselves. We say, you know what, when you hire most photographers that are where you get 2 photographers, you get a main photographer and a second shooter or an assistant. In our case, you get 2 first shooters because we work independently of each other and we document things completely differently. We very rarely see each other or near each other on the day of because we take on our own tasks. And Liliana tells her side of the story, I tell my side of the story, and when you put them together, you have a really complete story. Well, that's how we sell ourselves. We found a unique way of saying that we provide a service that's different than other studios that may do the same thing in terms of offering 2 photographers, but we offer 2 photographers in this way or this. You need to find a way of making yourself sound different and unique from all the other photographers around you to give them a reason to book you. And then create a call to action. And when I say create a call to action, I mean once you've met with them and you sit down with them and it's time to close, you need to create an actionable offer. And this is the biggest thing that we've done over the last few years. And I credit it to Mark Garber and Jennifer Gilman up in Ohio. But we created what's called a signing bonus. And I don't have it here. If you guys email me, I'm happy to share it with you. You can email me, pete@pwphotography.com. But basically our signing bonus After we've had our meeting with them in our studio and we've sat down and talked with them, when we've gone through everything, we spend, if we meet with them for an hour, 55 minutes of it is just talking to them, sharing with them how we like to photograph, showing them images, asking questions about them, getting to know them. It's 55 minutes or so of just great interaction. Now you've gone through, you've shown them your packages. Well, now you really need to give them an actionable offer. You need to give them a reason to pull the trigger. And if you just say, okay, well, if you guys have any questions, let us know. We'll be here, and let them walk out the door, then there's no pressure for them to call you back. Now, I would never say, and we've never done this and I never will, we've never put a contract in front of them and asked a bride and groom to sign with us right then and there. I think if you put that pressure on somebody, you're probably going to turn them off. But you do need to give them a reason to book with you quickly, and there needs to be something that's at stake. So what we did is we created a signing bonus, and again, this came from Mark Garber and Jennifer Gillen, brilliant photographers. But basically what we do is we have a list of things that they get for free if they book with us and sit within 7 days of meeting with us. So on that 8th day, all those things go away. Now, the nice thing is everything on that signing bonus costs us nothing. In fact, there's sessions like an engagement session and a bridal session and online galleries or things like that, things that literally cost us nothing, but they're of value to them. In fact, not only do they cost us nothing, they actually generate sales for us, because by including the engagement session and the bridal session and the signing bonus, because they had to take the time, they had to create the actionable offer or get that done within 7 days, now they feel the urgency of, I've got to do my engagement session, I've got to do my bridal session, I signed within 7 days to get these things. Well, now every single one of our brides and grooms do all the different sessions that are included in that signing bonus. One of the things we have is a $100 parents album credit. Well, we maybe in the past would sell 4 total parents albums. Well, now we include a $100 parent album credit for each set of parents, and we literally sell parents albums to every single wedding that we do. So our parents albums went from 4 total in a year to 30 or 40 in a year just by adding this in here. And all we did was we raised our parents' album prices by $100. So yes, we gave them $100, but we raised our prices $100. So we really gave nothing away. But because they had a certificate that gave them $100 off, they felt like, well, we need to use this. This is great. It gave them value. So all these things, and there's just, there's probably 7, 8, 9 things on the signing bonus list that's there that because they have that and they realize, okay, if I don't sign within 7 days, I'm going to lose all this stuff. Well, now there's a call to action. So they can leave, but now the stopwatch has started ticking. And now they have to make some decisions. Even if they're meeting with other photographers, they got to act quick. And when we started doing that, we literally, our closing rate went up to about 85%. We didn't have brides calling us 2 months later wanting to book. They literally were booking within 5-6 days after meeting with us on a regular basis, and it was great. I mean, our closing rate became so much higher just because we did that. So from there, once you've done all those things and you've done your call to action, now it's time to go shoot the wedding. And this is where you really need to step into your soul as an artist and create amazing images that you love to do. And this is kind of the end of my program, but I like to tell everybody, as an artist, as a photographer, try to find things in your work that you really, really love doing and incorporate that into every single wedding. I see so many photographers burn out because they feel like weddings have become repetitive to them and they're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and they're not doing anything for them. And I always feel like if you're photographing weddings and you're doing things that you love and you're doing them for you, you find the clients that want to book you because of the work that you do, because they see the passion in it. So, I highly recommend doing things for you and doing the work that you love, and the right clients will find you. A couple of things before I go. If you're going to be out at WPPI, please stop by the collages.net booth. They're going to be out there. And my good friend Adrian Hinson and I are actually going to be doing a workshop out there. It's a hands-on workshop for a half a day. We're going to bring out some great models from on Friday, February 28th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We're going to go out on location and just shoot and show posing and lighting and off-camera lighting and composition and really give you guys a great hands-on experience, and we'd love to have you join us. The whole thing is hosted by my website, pluggedinphoto.com, and love you guys to check that out as well. It's actually a free educational resource. It's 100% video-based. It doesn't cost you guys a dime. There's no joining, but you can go and see studio tours, behind the scenes of photo shoots, product reviews, all kinds of cool stuff. In fact, while we're out at WPPI, I'm going to be sitting down with the great people at collages.net, and we're going to be doing some product reviews of some of their new albums and products that they have coming out. So if you're not able to make it out to WPPI, you'll feel like you were there because you'll be able to sit down and watch a video and hear all the cool things that they have and get some great information. So I do invite you guys to make your way over to pluggedinphoto.com and check out some really great free education.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete. That was very, very helpful. And for anyone out there that is going to be in WPPI or out in Vegas for WPPI, like Pete said, we will have a booth there. We'll be providing more info about that later. And if you are interested in working with Pete a little bit more, check out his website, pluggedinphoto.com. There's a lot of great product reviews. And also, while Pete is out there, I'll be working with his good friend there, so you guys can feel free to sign up for that. It's going to be a great little work. Real quick, Pete, I'm just going to take the screen sharing back over
Absolutely.
to myself.